There is one question most women will never answer honestly, and if you knew the truth, you might never look at her the same way again. A lot of men have felt this, folks. You meet a woman who seems polished, confident, calm, even unusually easy to be with. Nothing feels messy. Nothing feels uncertain. She says the right things, moves with total comfort, and makes intimacy seem natural. And because it feels smooth, most men assume it must be real. But later, something starts bothering you. The detachment, the strange emotional distance, the way her past keeps showing up without being named. You cannot prove it, but you feel it. Something is off. Here is the hard truth, my friend. In modern dating, many men ignore the signs because they have been taught to dismiss their instincts. They see practiced behavior and call it maturity. They see emotional numbness and call it confidence. They see speed and call it chemistry. That is where men get blindsided. In this video, we are going to break down the signs that reveal more than she will ever admit out loud. You will learn what to watch for, how to separate real composure from emotional damage, and why certain patterns always leave clues if you know how to read them. Pay close attention especially to the middle signs, because that is where most men get fooled. Let's get into it. Number 1. Effortless intimacy feels too easy. Let's call this out clearly, folks. When intimacy feels too smooth, too fast, and almost rehearsed, most men take that as a win. They think they got lucky. They think the chemistry is just that strong. But here is the uncomfortable truth, my friend. Real connection has friction. It has hesitation. It has moments where energy builds naturally. When all of that is missing, you are not always looking at chemistry. Sometimes you are looking at repetition. Let me walk you through something real. Kevin, 53, from Dallas, meets Amanda, 48, at a networking event. They hit it off quickly. Conversation flows. There is no awkwardness, no pauses, no uncertainty. Within a short time, the energy turns physical. It all feels incredibly easy. At first, Kevin feels like he has finally found something different, something rare. But later that night, something starts to bother him. There was no build-up, no tension, no moment where things could have gone either way. It just happened. And that is where most men miss what is right in front of them. Let's be honest here. When something is real, especially at the beginning, there is always a bit of unpredictability, a moment of hesitation, a subtle nervous energy. That is what makes it feel alive. But when intimacy feels completely polished, completely controlled, and completely effortless, you have to ask yourself a different question. Is this natural, or is this practiced? Because there is a difference between connection and performance. Carl Jung spoke about how repeated experiences shape behavior at a deep level. When someone has been through the same emotional and physical patterns over and over, those patterns become automatic, smooth, efficient. But efficiency is not the same as intimacy. Intimacy is messy. It is uncertain. It requires presence. Performance removes all of that. Here is where Stoic awareness becomes important. The Stoics believed that perception matters more than reaction. Instead of getting pulled into how something feels in the moment, you step back and observe it. You ask yourself what is actually happening beneath the surface. So instead of thinking this feels easy, you ask, why does it feel this easy? Because when everything is perfectly timed, perfectly executed, and completely free of hesitation, you are not being invited into something new. You may be stepping into something that has been repeated many times before, and that changes the meaning entirely. Kevin told me later that what stayed with him was not excitement. It was a strange sense that he had not really been chosen. He had simply fit into a pattern. That is the difference most men fail to see. You are not looking for ease, you are looking for authenticity. And authenticity always carries a bit of tension. So the next time you feel that instant, effortless pull, do not just accept it at face value. Pay attention to what is missing, because sometimes what is missing tells you more than what is there. If this makes sense to you, type this below. I notice patterns. Stay with me. What comes next will show you how emotional detachment can look like confidence and why most men misread it completely. Number 2. She stays emotionally unattached. Let's clear something up right away, folks. A woman who seems calm, unbothered, and emotionally steady can look very attractive on the surface. Most men see that and think they are dealing with maturity, with control, with someone who is not dramatic or reactive. But here is the part you need to look closer at, my friend. There is a difference between emotional stability and emotional absence. And if you do not learn to tell the difference, you will misread the situation completely. Let's call it what it is. When a woman stays emotionally untouched by everything, when nothing seems to reach her, when she moves through moments that should create connection without any shift in energy that is not always strength. Sometimes that is detachment. Now understand this clearly. Stoicism is not detachment. Stoicism is awareness and control. It is feeling fully, but choosing how to respond. It is grounded presence, not emotional distance. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not become numb to life, but instead learn how to meet it with clarity and discipline. That means being engaged, not disconnected. So when you are dealing with someone who seems completely unaffected, you need to ask yourself a different question. Is she composed or is she unavailable? Because real connection always leaves traces. There are small emotional shifts, moments of vulnerability, subtle reactions that show she is present in the experience with you. When those are missing, something else is happening. Let me put it in a way that is easy to see. If you can disappear for a few days and nothing changes, if your presence or absence does not create any noticeable shift in her energy, that is not independence. That is emotional distance. If you share something meaningful and it lands flat with no depth, no curiosity, no emotional response, that is not calm. That is disconnection. Epictetus taught that what matters is not what happens, but how we respond to it. And in real attraction, response is everything. It shows investment. It shows that something is being felt. When that response is missing, you are not building connection. You are interacting with someone who is not fully present. Now, here is where many men get it wrong. They interpret that detachment as high value. They think she is hard to impress, hard to reach, and that makes them chase harder. They try to earn a reaction. But the more they chase, the more they step into a dynamic where they are investing and she is not. That imbalance never leads to anything real. Here is the shift you need to make. Stop chasing emotional response. Start observing emotional availability. Because the woman who is truly grounded will respond, even if it is subtle. She will show signs of being affected, even if she remains composed. But the woman who is disconnected will remain the same no matter what you bring into the interaction, and that sameness is your signal. So pay attention, my friend, not to how calm she looks, but to whether anything you do actually reaches her. If nothing reaches her, nothing will grow there. If this makes sense to you, type this below. I see clearly. Stick with me. What comes next will show you how her past starts showing up in the present, even when she thinks she is hiding it. Number 3. Her past feels always present. Let's look at something most men notice but rarely understand, folks. You are sitting with her, having a conversation, and somehow, without her saying it directly, it feels like you are not the only man in the room. Not physically, but psychologically. And that feeling matters more than most men realize. Here is the truth you need to face, my friend. When a woman has fully processed her past, it does not dominate the present. It may come up naturally, but it does not shape every interaction, every reaction, every emotional shift. But when the past is unresolved, it does not stay in the past. It leaks. Let me give you a real situation. Thomas, 57, from New Jersey, starts dating Lisa, 52. At first, everything seems normal. Good conversation, shared interests, steady pace. But as they spend more time together, a pattern starts to show. Lisa brings up her ex often, not always directly but indirectly. She compares small things. She makes comments like, "I used to deal with this kind of behavior before," or "I have seen this play out already." At first, Thomas brushes it off, but then it becomes more noticeable. Whenever there is a disagreement, she does not respond to him. She reacts to something else, something older, something that is not fully resolved. It feels like he is stepping into a story that started long before he arrived. And that is exactly what is happening. Let's call it what it is. When her past shows up in the present, you are not building something new, you are entering something unfinished. Carl Jung talked about how unresolved experiences do not disappear. They repeat. They show up again and again until they are fully understood and integrated. So, if she has not done that work, you will feel it. It shows up in how she reacts. It shows up in how she interprets your behavior. It shows up in how quickly she assumes patterns that may not even exist. Now here is where many men get it wrong. They try to fix it. They try to prove they are different. They try to separate themselves from the past by explaining, reassuring, or over-investing. But that never works, because you are not dealing with logic. You are dealing with emotional memory. Let me be direct here. If you constantly feel compared, measured, or placed into a category that you did not create, that is your signal. You are not being seen for who you are. You are being filtered through what she has already experienced. Thomas told me later that the most frustrating part was not what she said, but what she assumed. He felt like he was being judged by a standard he had nothing to do with. That is the weight of an unresolved past, and it creates distance, even when everything on the surface looks fine. So, what do? You pay attention, not just to what she says, but to the patterns underneath. Does she respond to you, or to something behind you? Is she present with you, or reacting to a memory? Because those are two very different experiences, and only one of them leads to real connection. If this hits something real for you, type this below. I see the pattern. Stay with me. What comes next will show you how her social circle reveals more than she ever will directly. Number 4. Too many men around her. Let's address something most men feel, but hesitate to question, folks. When a woman is constantly surrounded by male attention, when there is always another man texting, calling, checking in, or orbiting around her, it may look like social proof. But here is what you need to look at more carefully, my friend. Not the presence of those men, but the role they play. Because there is a difference between having a social circle and maintaining a rotation. Let's call it what it is. When multiple men are consistently present in her life, not as distant acquaintances, but as emotionally available backups, you are not stepping into a clean dynamic. You are stepping into a system. And in that system, you are not necessarily the focus. You are one of the options. Most men try to rationalize this. They tell themselves, she is just friendly, she is just outgoing, she just gets along with people. And sometimes that is true. But here is where you need to pay attention. Is there clear boundary? Is there distinction between you and them? Or does it all blur together? Because when everything blends, you are not building something exclusive. You are entering an environment where attention is distributed, not invested. Marcus Aurelius spoke about clarity in relationships with the world around you, to see things not as you wish them to be, but as they are. And this is one of those moments where clarity matters. If she keeps multiple men close, emotionally engaged and available, that is not accidental. That is structure. And structure reveals intention. Now here is the part most men ignore. When you are in that position, you are not just connecting with her. You are competing with a network you did not choose to be part of. Even if she never says it directly, the dynamic is there. Attention becomes currency, availability becomes leverage, and your presence becomes replaceable. That is not a foundation for real connection. Epictetus taught that you should never attach yourself to what you cannot control. And in this situation, you cannot control how many men she keeps in her orbit. You cannot control how she distributes her attention, but you can control what you choose to engage with. Because the man who understands his value does not compete for position. He observes the environment and decides whether it aligns with what he wants. Here is the shift. Stop asking, how do I stand out? Start asking, is this even a space worth standing in? Because when a woman creates an environment where multiple men are constantly present, it often means she is not ready to focus on one. And that means you will always be sharing the dynamic. This is not about insecurity, it is about awareness. You are not looking for constant validation, you are looking for clear intention. And if that intention is divided, your energy will always feel that. If you are serious about understanding these dynamics on a deeper level, not just in dating, but in how you carry yourself as a man, then you need to go further than surface-level advice. Inside the Stoic men's circle, we break down these patterns, sharpen your awareness, and help you build the kind of presence that does not chase attention, it commands respect. If this makes sense to you, type this below. I see clearly. Don't go anywhere. What comes next will show you how her behavior can start mirroring you so perfectly that it feels like a connection, but is actually something else entirely. Number 5. She mirrors you too perfectly. Let me tell you something that confuses a lot of men, folks. When a woman seems to match you perfectly, when she likes everything you like, agrees with your views, shares your energy, and feels like she just gets you right away, it feels rare. It feels like you finally found someone who understands you. But here is where you need to slow down, my friend, because sometimes what feels like deep compatibility is not connection, it is reflection. And there is a difference. Let me walk you through something real. Andrew, 56, from Phoenix, meets Melissa, 51, through mutual friends. Within the first few conversations, something feels almost too good. He mentions he likes quiet weekends. She says the same. He talks about staying disciplined with fitness. She mirrors that. He shares his views on relationships. She agrees almost instantly, with no pushback, no variation, no difference. At first, Andrew feels like he hit something special. Finally, someone aligned. But after a few weeks, something begins to feel off. There is no contrast, no individuality, no moment where she challenges him, surprises him, or reveals something that feels uniquely her. Everything seems to adapt to him, and that is where the shift happens. Let's call it what it is. When someone mirrors you too perfectly, too quickly, it is not always authenticity. It can be adaptation. Carl Jung described how people project and also absorb traits in order to create connection. But when that process becomes excessive, it turns into something else. It turns into identity fragmentation. Instead of showing who they are, they show what works. Now here is why this matters. Real connection includes differences. It includes moments where two people see things differently, feel differently, respond differently. That is what creates depth. But when everything aligns too easily, too early, you are not building something organic. You are stepping into something constructed. Let's be honest here. If within a short time she seems to share all your interests, all your values and all your preferences without any natural development, you need to ask yourself one question. Is she revealing herself, or is she adjusting to you? Because those are not the same. Andrew told me later that what stood out most was how quickly things shifted when he changed direction. The moment he expressed a different opinion or pulled back slightly, her responses shifted to match that new position almost immediately. That is not depth. That is adaptation. And adaptation creates a false sense of connection. At first it feels exciting. It feels easy. It feels like you found someone who fits perfectly into your world. But over time, it creates instability. Because you are not connecting with something solid. You are connecting with something flexible. And flexible identity does not build lasting attraction. So, here is what you need to watch for. Pay attention to how quickly she aligns with you. Notice if there is any resistance, any individuality, any sense of her own direction. Because the woman who knows who she is will not match you perfectly. She will complement you. She will bring something of her own into the interaction. And that is what creates real connection. Not sameness, balance. If this resonates with you, type this below. I see the mirror. Stay with me. What comes next will show you how the speed of intimacy reveals more than words ever can. Number 6. Intimacy happens too fast. Let's break something down that most men completely misunderstand, folks. When intimacy happens quickly, when things escalate fast, when there is little resistance and everything feels instantly available, it can feel exciting. It can feel like strong attraction. But here is the reality you need to face, my friend. Speed does not always mean connection. In many cases, speed removes value. Let's call it exactly what it is. Anything that is easily accessed is rarely deeply valued. That is not just opinion. That is a pattern you see everywhere, and it applies to attraction just as much as anything else. When intimacy develops naturally, it carries weight. There is build-up. There is tension. There is uncertainty that slowly turns into trust. That process is what creates emotional investment. But when intimacy happens too fast, all of that is skipped. There is no build-up, no tension, no emotional depth being formed. And without that, what you are left with is not connection, it is experience. Now here is where most men get it wrong. They interpret fast intimacy as a sign of desire. They think she is really into them, that they have created something strong in a short amount of time. But what they are often stepping into is a pattern. Carl Jung spoke about how repeated behavior creates familiarity, and familiarity reduces resistance. When someone has moved through the same emotional and physical cycles many times, those cycles become easier to repeat. That ease can look like chemistry, but it is not the same thing, because real chemistry develops. It does not appear fully formed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that nothing of value is built without process. That applies directly here. When something meaningful is forming, it takes time, not because it is forced, but because it is unfolding. So when everything accelerates too quickly, you need to step back and observe, not react. Observe. Because fast intimacy often serves a different function. It can be a way to create immediate attachment. It can be a way to control the dynamic, or it can be a way to bypass emotional depth entirely. And that last one is the most important. When emotional depth is skipped, there is nothing holding the connection in place once the initial excitement fades. That is why fast connections often collapse just as quickly as they form. Now, here is the shift you need to make. Stop measuring attraction by how fast things move. Start measuring it by how much substance is being built underneath the surface. Because a connection that develops with pacing, with tension, with moments of uncertainty, is one that creates real investment. A connection that skips all of that creates temporary intensity, and intensity is not the same as stability. Epictetus taught that the man who lacks control over himself will always be pulled by impulse. And this is one of those moments where that applies directly. If you get caught up in speed, you lose awareness. If you stay grounded, you see clearly. So the next time things move too quickly, do not just go along with it. Pay attention to what is missing, because what is missing is usually where the truth is. If this makes sense to you, type this below. I see the pace. Stay tuned. What comes next exposes the final pattern most men ignore, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. Number 7. She never stays alone. Let's talk about something deeper than behavior, folks. Something most men overlook because it does not show up in words, but in patterns. Pay attention to this, my friend. If a woman moves from one relationship to the next without any real space in between, if she is always talking to someone, always connected, always transitioning, that is not coincidence, that is a pattern. And patterns reveal more than anything she will ever tell you directly. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Daniel, 58, from Atlanta, meets Karen, 53, through a mutual friend. They start seeing each other, and everything feels smooth at first. Good conversations, steady energy, consistent communication. But after a few weeks, Daniel starts noticing something. Karen mentions her ex, but not as someone fully in the past. The timeline feels blurred. There was no real gap, no time where she was just by herself. Before that relationship, the same thing, one connection moving into another. And even now, Daniel senses that he is not stepping into a clear space. He is stepping into a continuation. That is the part most men miss. Let's be honest here. The ability to be alone is one of the strongest indicators of emotional stability. Not isolation, not avoidance, but the ability to sit with yourself without needing constant distraction. When that ability is missing, something else fills the space. Carl Jung spoke about how the unconscious mind avoids emptiness. When someone has not learned to face that emptiness, they fill it with people, attention, and connection. Not because they are building something meaningful, but because they are avoiding something uncomfortable. That is where this pattern comes from. It is not about you. It is about the inability to sit in stillness. Now, here is where this becomes important for you. When a woman cannot stay alone, she does not fully process her experiences. She moves forward without resolving what came before. And because of that, every new connection carries pieces of the last one. That creates instability. Because you are not building on a clean foundation. You are building on something that is constantly shifting. Daniel told me later that what stood out most was how quickly Karen needed connection. Not in an obvious way, but in subtle ways. Constant communication, constant presence, a need for engagement that never really paused. At first it felt like interest. Later, it felt like dependency, and those two things are not the same. The Stoics believed that a man must be able to stand on his own, not because he rejects connection, but because he is not controlled by it. The same principle applies here. If someone cannot be alone, they cannot choose connection freely. They need it. And when something is needed, it is not stable. It becomes reactive. It becomes inconsistent. It becomes something that shifts depending on what fills the space at that moment. So, here is what you need to watch for. Look at the gaps. Look at the transitions. Look at whether she has ever truly stepped out of connection and into herself. Because that space matters more than most men realize. A woman who can be alone chooses you. A woman who cannot be alone fills the space with you. And those are two very different experiences. If this hits something real for you, type this below. I see the pattern. Stay with me. What comes next will bring all of this together and show you the one thing most men feel but cannot explain. Number 8. She avoids deep attachment. Let's go deeper into something most men feel but struggle to explain, folks. There are situations where everything looks right on the surface. She is present. She engages. She shows interest. She gives attention just enough to keep things moving. But something never fully lands. Something never locks in. And over time you start to realize it is not because the connection is weak. It is because it is being held at a certain distance on purpose. Let's call this out directly, my friend. When a woman avoids deep attachment, she does not reject connection completely. She manages it. She controls how far it goes. She keeps it in a range where it feels real, but never fully rooted. That is the difference. Now here is where most men misunderstand this. They think inconsistency means confusion. They think she is unsure. They think if they just show up better, be more patient or prove themselves, more things will deepen. But the truth is much simpler. Depth is not missing by accident. It is being avoided. Carl Jung spoke about how the mind protects itself from what it has not resolved. When someone has experienced repeated emotional cycles without integration, attachment itself can start to feel like a risk. So, instead of building something deeper, they maintain a level of connection that feels safe. Not too close, not too distant, just enough. And that just enough is where most men get stuck, because it keeps hope alive without ever creating stability. Now, pay attention to how this shows up. You may notice that she shares, but only to a certain point. Conversations open, but then shift before they get too personal. Moments that could deepen the connection are redirected, softened, or turned into something lighter. Nothing breaks, but nothing builds either. Marcus Aurelius wrote that clarity comes when you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. And this is one of those moments where that matters. If a connection is not deepening over time, it is not because time has not been enough. It is because depth is not being allowed. That is the key difference. Now, here is what makes this pattern difficult to recognize. It does not feel like rejection. It feels like almost there, almost deeper, almost something real. And that almost keeps you engaged. But the Stoics would remind you that what matters is not what appears, but what remains consistent over time. And if you step back and observe, you will see the pattern clearly. Consistency in surface, inconsistency in depth. Epictetus taught that attachment without awareness leads to suffering, and this is exactly where that applies. If you attach to the potential of what something could become, instead of seeing what it actually is, you lose clarity. And once you lose clarity, you lose control. So here is the shift you need to make. Stop measuring connection by moments. Start measuring it by progression. Is it growing deeper, or is it staying in the same range, no matter how much time passes? Because real attachment evolves. It becomes more grounded, more open, more real. But controlled connection stays the same. It circles, it repeats. It keeps you close enough to stay, but not close enough to matter. And that is the pattern you need to recognize. If this makes sense to you, type this below. I see the truth. Don't go anywhere. What comes next will expose the final signal most men feel but cannot explain. And once you see it, everything connects. Number 9. Her energy feels practiced. Let's get real about something most men feel but cannot quite put into words, folks. You are around her. The conversation flows, the tone is right, the timing feels smooth, the reactions seem perfectly placed. On the surface, everything looks ideal. But underneath, something feels off. Not wrong, just rehearsed. And that feeling matters more than most men realize. Here is the truth, my friend. When energy feels too polished, too consistent, too controlled across every situation, you are not always experiencing authenticity. Sometimes you are experiencing familiarity. Let me show you what this looks like. Brian, 59, from Los Angeles, meets Jennifer, 54, at a private event. From the very beginning, she is engaging, warm, and responsive. She laughs at the right moments, maintains eye contact, touches his arm lightly at just the right time. Everything feels smooth, almost cinematic. Brian feels drawn in quickly. It feels like strong chemistry, like she just knows how to connect. But after a few interactions, something starts to stand out. The patterns repeat, the same tone, the same pacing, the same type of responses, regardless of context. Even when the situation changes, her energy stays almost identical. And that is where the shift happens. Let's call it what it is. When someone has gone through the same social and emotional dynamics repeatedly, they develop a rhythm, a way of interacting that works. And once it works, it gets repeated, over and over. Carl Jung spoke about how repeated experiences shape behavior into automatic patterns. These patterns become part of how a person presents themselves, not because they are being fake, but because they are operating from what is familiar. But here is the difference. Familiarity creates consistency. Authenticity creates variation. Real connection has texture. It changes depending on the moment. It responds to the environment. It carries subtle shifts in tone, energy, and expression. But practiced energy stays the same. It feels smooth in every situation. And that smoothness can be misleading. Let's be honest here. When someone responds in a way that always feels perfectly timed, perfectly balanced, and perfectly controlled, you have to ask yourself a different question. Is this natural or is this learned? Because learned behavior can mimic connection very well, but it does not carry depth. Brian told me later that what unsettled him was not anything obvious. It was the lack of unpredictability. No moment where she seemed unsure. No moment where her guard dropped. No moment where things felt raw or unfiltered. It was always clean. And that is not how real connection feels. The Stoics believed that a man should be grounded in reality, not illusion. To see things clearly even when they feel good in the moment. This is one of those moments, because practiced energy creates attraction quickly, but it does not sustain it. Why? Because it lacks emotional risk. It lacks vulnerability. It lacks the small imperfections that make something real. So here is what you need to watch for, my friend. Pay attention to variation. Does her energy shift naturally depending on the moment? Does she ever show uncertainty, depth, or real reaction? Or does everything feel like it is running on a script? Because the more consistent and polished it feels across every situation, the more likely you are dealing with something practiced. And practiced energy is designed to engage, not to connect. Brian realized later that what he felt was not deep attraction. It was recognition. He had seen that energy before, just in different forms, and once he saw it clearly, the illusion disappeared. If this hits something real for you, type this below. I see the pattern. Stay with me. What comes next will bring everything together and show you the one signal you have felt all along but could never fully explain. Number 10. You feel something is off. Let me bring this all together in the most direct way possible, folks. After everything we have broken down, all the signs, all the patterns, all the behaviors, there is one thing that sits above all of it: your instinct. That quiet feeling you cannot explain. That moment when everything looks right on the surface, but something underneath does not sit right with you. Let's call it what it is, my friend. That feeling is not random. It is not insecurity. It is not overthinking. It is recognition. Your mind is picking up on patterns your words cannot fully describe yet. Most men ignore this. They override it with logic. They tell themselves they are being too cautious, too guarded, too critical. They look for reasons to dismiss what they feel because everything appears good enough on the outside. But here is the truth you need to face. What you feel matters more than what you are being shown. Let me give you something real. Stephen, 57, from Boston, meets Laura, 52. On paper, everything lines up. She is engaging, responsive, easy to be around. Conversations flow. There are no major red flags. But from the beginning, Stephen feels something he cannot explain. It is subtle, a slight disconnect, a sense that something is not fully grounded. He cannot point to anything specific, so he ignores it. Weeks go by. The pattern continues. Everything seems fine, but nothing feels solid. No real depth. No clear direction, just a consistent feeling that he is not fully connecting, even though everything suggests he should be. And that is the part most men miss. Let's be honest here. Your mind processes far more than you consciously notice. Tone timing, micro-reactions, emotional consistency, all of it gets registered below the surface. And when those signals do not align, you feel it, not as a clear thought, but as discomfort. Carl Jung described this as the unconscious recognizing patterns before the conscious mind can explain them. That is why you feel something before you understand it, and that feeling is your signal. Now here is where Stoicism becomes critical. Marcus Aurelius spoke about the importance of trusting your perception when it is grounded in observation, not emotion. This is not about reacting impulsively. It is about stepping back and asking yourself one simple question. What am I consistently feeling in this dynamic? Not what you hope, not what you want it to become, but what is actually there. Because when something is real, it builds clarity. It feels grounded. It becomes more stable over time. But when something is off, that feeling does not go away. It lingers. It repeats. It stays in the background, no matter how much you try to ignore it. Stephen told me later that the moment he finally paid attention to that feeling, everything made sense. The inconsistency, the lack of depth, the patterns he could not name before. Nothing changed overnight. He just stopped ignoring what was already there. And that is the final shift. You do not need more signs. You do not need more proof. You need awareness. Because the man who trusts his perception, who observes without forcing meaning, and who walks away when something does not align, is the man who stays in control. So the next time you feel that quiet signal, do not dismiss it. Sit with it. Look at it clearly. Because more often than not, it is telling you the truth long before words ever will. You have just seen how the signs are never random. From effortless intimacy, emotional detachment, and a past that never stays buried, to patterns in behavior, speed, and presence, it all points to one thing. If you pay attention, the truth always reveals itself. This is not about judging. It is about seeing clearly. Because the man who understands these patterns does not get pulled into confusion. He stays grounded, aware, and in control of his choices. If you are serious about sharpening that level of awareness and building real masculine presence, join the Stoic Men's Circle. That is where we go deeper and turn this understanding into something you actually live. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what is coming next. Thanks for being here, my friend. I will see you tomorrow.